Welcome back, Knicks fans. This is Civil Analytics for Knicks fans, and I just wanted to drop a quick video about Julius Randle. I know he's been having some good games statistically on the offensive end lately. As you guys notice, I chose those words very carefully on the offensive end. He's looked better lately, on the offensive end only, but defensively, he's really struggled. But we want to kind of keep all this in perspective, right? He's been having some good games here and there recently, and we want to take a look at those stats. We want to see take a step back and see how it compares to the rest of this season, and then we also want to see what happened to Julius Randle, right? Last year, although it was very small talk, it was like quiet talks about him possibly being an MVP candidate last year. Nobody took it really that seriously. But I mean, there were little talks, right? And he put up some crazy numbers. As a matter of fact, before the season began, I did drop a video where I compared Julius Randle's stats from the previous season to Nikola Jokic. And obviously, Nikola Jokic is a way more efficient offensive player, way better offensive play, right? And so I even made that clear on that video. And I was basically on that video. I also talked about some of the things Julius Randle could work on. But regardless, Julius Randle had a hell of a season last year. And I've given him props, a lot of props for the season he had last year. So last year, he basically shot almost 46% from the field, averaged 24 points, averaged almost 6 assists, averaged 10 rebounds. I mean, those are kind of like, there's not a lot of other people that are able to average those kind of stats except for like people like LeBron, Magic, Bird, Luca, so there, and also of course Jokic, right? And so there's not a lot of players around that's played this game that put up those kind of numbers. So he actually had a great year last year statistically. Obviously, with the one big caveat was he just wasn't efficient enough. He shot about 45.5% from the field last year, almost 46. But it just, like if you can look at it compared to like Nikola Jokic this year shooting 57%, Giannis 54, and B 49. So it's like all these other players are way more efficient. Of course, you get down to these guards and small forwards, they're not as efficient like the younger guys. Steph Curry, he's struggling this year. He's only at 43. Although I got to double check this number, but I'm kind of shocked. Jason Tatum's almost at 44, and this year, but most of these guys are basically close to 50%, right? Except for these young guys, these guys that are around 45% that are on the MVP talk this year. These are young guys, so it's understandable. Like Luka Doncic, you would think this is like his third or fourth year in the league, so you would think his efficiency is going to improve as he gets older. Trae Young, same thing for him. Jason Tatum, his efficiency is definitely going to improve. But that's pretty much it. The only other person here is Steph Curry, who's averaging 43%. Like I said, which is kind of hard to believe, but that's what I'm showing right now. But anyway, let's stay on topic, right? We want to figure out what happened to Julius Randle this year. I want to compare his stats from last year to this year. And also I want to compare his stats to basically some of these MVP candidates. I basically picked out these, what are these? Looking at here, I think it's 11. Or is it? Yep, there's 11 MVP candidates here, right? And I have all their statistics. I want to compare his stats this year to their stats so we can see how far away and what kind of player Julius Randle is, right? At least what kind of player he is this year. So let's get going with it. So now, I've been, honestly, I post online, mostly like on the video, like when people drop videos, I'll drop a comment, and sometimes you get into back and forths with like Knicks fans about, Julius Randle, and a lot of the fans that are basically in support of Julius Randle, and there's nothing wrong with that, which is great. But they're talking about how the Julius Randle's like, what do they have to say because Julius is playing great lately? First of all, he's really not playing that great lately, right? He's having good games here and there, but people need to stop getting it twisted. He's not playing great. And And so I've been having some back and forth with people, and I just want to kind of like, I think some people do need a reality check. I want to check some of these Knicks fans and like, look, dude, let's keep it real. Got to keep it a buck. Julius Randle had a hell of a season last year because it was time, contract. It was his contract year. That's why he came into last season in tip-top condition. He wanted that bag, and he needed to basically do whatever he had to do to make sure he got that bag, right? And he did that. He put up hell of a stats last year, had a heck of a season, and we'll go through that. And then this season, he's already got the money. He signed that contract. Reports came out he actually came into the season out of shape. He's shooting worse. You could tell he's not even applying himself on a defensive end. You look at the last game that these Knicks played against the Brooklyn Nets, man, dude barely put up a fight against Kevin Durant. Early in the game, Kevin, he kind of contested some of Kevin Durant's shot, but he looked on both sides. Like, it was crazy. Kevin Durant, he had nothing for Kevin Durant. And Kevin Durant is playing both ways, essentially. Kevin Durant dropped like 53 points, right? It got so bad. His defensive effort was so bad against Kevin Durant during this last game that they ended up switching off and had R.J. Barrett guard Kevin Durant the rest of the game. Honestly, R.J. Barrett played a terrible defensive game too. He didn't put in enough effort this game on the defensive end. But the little heart Julius Randle showed versus Kevin Durant, you can see it. Didn't even bother trying to get over the screen really. Kind of died on the screen. And it was really disheartening to look at, right? I mean, Kevin Durant just did whatever he wanted versus Julius Randle. And Julius Randle, the other thing too, and look, Kevin Durant does this to a lot of people, but my issue was the lack of. I felt like Julius Randle he didn't show any heart this game at all versus Kevin Durant. Julius Randle is sometimes either he's chirpy on the court, he's pounding his chest, he's trying to let everyone know he's there, This game, quiet, quiet, very quiet this game. Statistically, he shot pretty well. I think he shot over 50%, but on the defensive end, he was very quiet. He didn't even though he had a decent game and shot efficiently on the offensive end, he was very quiet, right? And so that was very interesting. But either way, I just want to kind of give a lot of these Knicks fans a reality check on by us looking at exactly what's going on with Julius Randle this year. Look at some of these current performances with the rest of the season. First of all, let's pull up his stats let's pull up the late game logs for the year. Right now, we played 66 games this year so far. Right, out of 66 games that we've played, I actually went through a count, and Julius Randle only shot over 45% 22 times out of 66 games. That is not very good. Julius Randle on a season is shooting. If you take the average for all the games, it's actually a little higher than this, I think. But this year is showing he's shooting about 41%. But I think Julius is actually shooting. What is he shooting for the season? It's not 41% because the math is funky on here because it's the best way actually to do it is just to figure out, just take all the made field goals and all the attempted field goals and just do the math. It'll give you a more accurate reading because when you try to basically get the average of all these field goal averages, there's going to be a rounding error, right? And so it's not going to be accurate. But anyway, so this here shows 40%. But let's go back to the stat over here. Julius Randle is shooting 42% from the field in 2022. But let's go back to the previous to the game logs because so everyone thinks he's having he's really picked it up the last the last 10 or 20 games. You take the average of the last 10 games, he's shooting about 40%. Obviously, there's rounding error here. Let's give him a benefit of the doubt. 41%. Last 20 games, he's shooting 42% from the field, right? Let's give him a benefit of the doubt and bump that up to 42.5% for a case for rounding error. Right? That's the last 20 games. The last 30 games, he's shooting 40.5%. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt and bump it up to 41%. It doesn't matter how you slice it and dice it. It doesn't matter how you cherry pick the data. The dude is having a horrendous year on the offensive end. because he has a couple of good games here and there. People need to wake up and just compare it to what he's doing for the rest of the season, right? And so that's what you need to do. So obviously we talked a little bit about, we compared this delusion that people are having, like he's playing much better now. He's not playing much better. He is playing better, but if you kind of take a step back and look at how much better is he really playing, is it really consistent? We've looked at it over the last 10 games. We looked at it over the last 20 games. Looked at it over the last 30 games. And all of it shows he's shooting like 41, 42% from the field over that stretch of time. So please stop with all this Julius Randle is having, like, his season has turned around and he's doing great, because he's not. He's having, out of every 5 games he'll shoot 50% or close to 50. Thank God for that, right? But that doesn't mean that, that doesn't all of a sudden means this is the same Julius Randle from last year. So now, speaking of Julius Randle from last year, let's look at the 2021 numbers, right? Julius Randle averaged 24 points last year, shot almost 46%. He held opponent field goal opponents. He held them down to like 44% last year. Now, this number here is really tricky because of how NBA calculates it. Is basically they only basically count the number of basically the shots that he actually contests. We all know a lot of times Julius Randle, he just doesn't even make the effort a lot of times, and so this here is very, it's a tricky number right here, right? So, but let's give him that and say it was 44%, 43.9%, right? 9 defensive rebound. The reason why we're concerned about the defensive rebound, because this is the number that kind of one of the numbers that help predict your team's ability to win over the course of a season, and so that number, defensive rebound, is extremely important. And you can tell because that's the team's ability to close out a possession. If you do a good job, contest a shot, the team misses the shot, you get the rebound, it closes out the possession. And so the more defensive rebounds you have, that's correlated with basically, that has an indirect, the higher your defensive rebound, the lower the field goal percentage for the opposing team, right? And so there's an inverse relationship between opposing teams' shooting percentage and your team's defensive rebounding percentage. But anyway, so his offensive rating 111 last year. Defensive rating was like top 5 in the league last year at 107. So he had a net rating. If you're looking at he had a net player rating, individual rating of 1.7%. So this is one individual he brings. The net rating, this is basically the team stats or whatever, how well the team played while he was on the floor. The net rating for that was 4, right? Which is also pretty, which is okay, right? Nothing special. And obviously one of his issues is like his efficiency number is just a little low. Even last year, 46% is not that great. His effective field goal percentage last year, I think, was like 53%. So it's not that great, right? And so that's why his offensive rating is, the team's offensive rating is not that great. It's kind of low, right? Because he's accounts for a lot of the team's production, and he's just not that extremely efficient. And so when you kind of go over, so right here, when you add basically the individual player rating and the net rating, the team rating, you get 5.7, which isn't too bad. So if you compare that 5.7 to the current MVP candidates this year, I mean, you can say if he had the same numbers this year as he did last year, you can say he would be in the conversation. They wouldn't take him seriously as a candidate to win the MVP, but there will be people chirping and saying like, hey, why not consider Julius Randle as a candidate for MVP because he's having a great season. And, honestly, and that will be fine. And if you go over here and you compare basically, you basically add the total net rating and the defensive rebound, it goes up to 14.7. And you compare that to the rest of the candidates here, he's kind of in the middle of the road here, right? He would be basically tied with Steph Curry for 7th place on the in terms of the MVP candidates. Which ones is having the best statistical season? That's really what all this stats here and the ranking is. It's basically all the MVP candidates we have, who's having the best statistical season, and who's having the most impact winning, impact on the team in terms of winning. And then we sorted. And if you look at it, so compared this number here to the rest of the league, I mean, not the rest of the league, but the candidates here, I mean, that's pretty solid, right? But so now you guys are seeing why we had like that 51-41 record last year, right? It was like a lot of it was because of Julius Randle. There was a strong correlation between his performance, his net rating, his basically the team's performance while he was on the floor, and the overall team performance, basically the margin of victory for the team. And so that's the reason why the team won all those games that they did last year. Julius Randle was in large part responsible for a lot of those wins. And even if you go here and you add basically his scoring average to it, then he kind of moved down towards the bottom of the pile here. He would have been ranked, I think, 10th. He would have been tied with Luka Doncic at that point. That's if he had the same season. If he had the same statistics last season, if he had the statistics he had last season, if he had it this season, that's what would happen, right? But we know that was last season. That's not what happened last season. Let's take a look at what happened this season. This season, his win percentage for the team was 44%. They're below 500, right? I need to make sure. I'm not sure if this. I don't know if this is updated, but the team is sub 500. So his points per game went down to 20 and a half, right? Field goal percentage went down from almost 46% to 42%. That's almost 4 percentage points lower from the previous season. Opponent field goal percentage went up. He held teams to like 43.9% and went up this season to 45.6%, right? So that's getting close to getting close to 2 percentage points higher. So now this is where, the whole Julius Randle being out of shape, this is where you start to see from this opponent, this like defensive efforts, right? These defensive effort numbers, that's where it shows you the fact that he definitely was not in the same shape, and he's not locked in like he was last year. He obviously got his money, and the incentive is not there. He's got the leverage now, right? And so this is where you start to see it, that the fact that he's not in shape. And so because he's not as effective challenging opponents shooting the basketball. And actually, this is actually a little merciful in my opinion, because he's been atrocious. Like I said, they only count these when you actually contest a shot. Most of the time, he just lets his man go. He doesn't even bother chasing his man down to challenge the shot, especially when he loses his man or if he gets beat backdoor or anything like that. He just lets the man go and lets someone else challenge the shot. And then if nobody steps up, he waves his hand like, "Where's the help?" Right? And look at this. This number here. If I was calculating this, I will basically put the stat against a person who was at fault. If it was your man and you lost your man and someone else challenged the shot, instead of basically the statistic going on against the person who challenged the shot, I'll put it back on you, on you basically. Especially if that shot, if the opponent made the shot, that's what I would do. Defensive rebound also went down almost by 1 rebound a game. It's 0.8. That's almost 1 rebound a game. Again, effort, right? Now you look at basically the offensive rating, right? The thing that's really interesting, so the offensive rating obviously went way down. Defensive rating also went up. The thing that's really interesting is you can see here a lot of times it's hard to find a correlation between an individual's defensive performance. Well, I shouldn't say that because I haven't tested it, right? It's but looking at a lot of stats, you're just not always. I'm not always very sure sometimes. But with Julius Randle, it's really interesting to take note that last year, he allowed opponents shooting only basically less than 44% from the field against his team, and the defensive rating while he was on the floor was at 107. His opponent field goal went up this year by almost 2 percentage points. And if you notice, the defensive rating almost went up by 2 points. So it's showing there could be, you can make an argument there might be a correlation between his effort on the defensive end versus how it impacts a team's defense. And obviously, it does impact a team, right? If he's basically not playing defense, right, it's going to be harder on the team. The defense is going to be worse. So it does make sense. And I'm sure there is there is going to be a correlation, right? It's just you just have to basically just get the numbers and test it, right? And so now we start to look at the net rating here. And so the net player last year, his the net rating while he was on the floor for the team was +4. This year it's -5. It took a 9-point swing in the opposite direction, negative. It fell 9 points from one year to the next, right? You look at the player rating, the individual. What is he bringing to the? Wait a second. I'm sorry. I should have looked at this first. The net player rating. This is what he brings to the team. Last year is 1.7%. This year is -3.5%. That's almost that. What is that like? Almost a 5%. That's like actually it is a what is it like 5.2% swing, going in the opposite direction. This is just crazy. This is bananas. This is crazy stuff here, right? Let me just check this out. Let me see. Is this gonna work? 5.2%. It went down by 5.2% from one year to the next. This is just atrocious. This is his individual number right here. This is what he's bringing to the team, and this is how it's impacted the team. This is the impact that his performance has. This is how it has impacted the team this year, because it feels like there's a strong correlation. Like from looking at it, it feels like there's a correlation between his performance, individual performance, and the team's performance. And there was, because last year I basically tested his stats versus the margin of victory for the team, and there was like a strong correlation. It was strong enough. I think it was like either 0.69 or 0.70, somewhere in that range. And Jokic was the only person who was higher that I tested last year. And so, he definitely, his performance has a huge impact on his team. And I've always said, even before the season began, even when I made the video when I was comparing him to Jokic, I've always said that's a double-edged sword. If you have someone on your team where his statistics is that highly correlated with the team's margin of victory, you got to be careful, because that person, once that person starts to play bad, if he has a bad season, the team is going to have a bad season. And so everyone wants to blame Tibbs, and Tibbs does take partial blame for this. But the problem was everyone put all their hopes on this guy, and he basically kind of crapped the bed, right? It's like he didn't give a crap this year. He got his money and came into camp out of shape, and this is the production that you receive, right? He 5.6% lower from last year. 9 points lower. Team net rating is 9 points lower for him while he's on the court with the team from last year. And you look at it, you add both of them up. Let's see what the swing from one year to the next was. Am I doing this right? So let me see. Yeah, about 14.5. 14.2. So it's it's just like the fall from grace for this guy. It's just unbelievable. I've never seen this kind of fall from grace ever before. I've never seen a guy have the kind of season where the fans are chanting MVP, MVP, and then to have such a terrible performance the next season, and everyone knew basically. And the reason why everyone starts to boo him, because number one, you can see he's not hustling on the defensive end. He's not trying. The effort is not there, right? You can see that. And, so they start to boo. And the fans also knew he just got paid. And so they know, so the dude got paid and he doesn't want to play defense anymore. And he just doesn't care anymore. And it's not even just the defense. It's the offense. I'm just like, the only way to really I can say it's his effort is I can look at the defensive numbers, right? I can look at what the opponent is shooting against him. I can look at how many defensive rebounds he's getting this year versus last year. I can see all those things, right? Those are the things I can easily tie to effort. You can also tie offensive, performance to effort, right? Because he's not putting in the same work he put in last year, like in the gym. He's definitely not putting up the same amount of shots. His jump shot is broke this year, so he basically took off. After last season, he took the summer off didn't work on his jump shots, came in, didn't put in the work to work on his jump shots either during preseason. Hasn't been putting in the work in the at nights, to work on his jump shot. I mean, that's essentially what I think happened, in my opinion. That's what happened to Julius Randle. And so, dude has this huge fall from grace, right? And it's like he just looked atrocious. He just looks terrible this year. There's no way to slice it. It's great he's having a good couple of games, here and there. But let's be real. Let's go back to those game logs again. So against Brooklyn Nets, he shot 52%. Prior 2 games, he shot 40%, 41%, and then 42%. Then he had a game versus Sacktown. He shot 58%. Good. Then he basically had a game where he shot 5%. Then shot 50%. So I guess this is where people are talking about, right? Because he had this kind of cluster of games here where he shot 50% in 3 games. He shot basically, there was 3 games, 2 out of 3 games he shot 50% or better, 2 out of 3 games. But then you look at all the games prior, look at the games prior to that. Before that, he shot 42%, 30%, 13%, 45%, 45.5%, 42%, 40, 43, right? So he had basically, what is this? 9 games where he shot about 45%. He shot less than 45%. One of them he shot 45%. But, so basically 1 out of 8 games he shot 45%. The rest of them he shot sub 44 actually. I mean, it's like I'm not sure what people are looking at. Then he had 3 games before then, 3 games in a row where he shot 50%, which is good, right? That's what people are looking at. Excuse me. Then before that, he had let me count this here. Then he had basically 14 games that he played, and in 14 games he played, he shot 45% or better in 1, 2, 3 games, 3 out of 14 games. So I mean, it's. Yeah, maybe he's putting in. I guess that's a little bit. It is better than what he was doing early in the season, but like I said, it's last 10 games 40%, last 20 games 42%, last 30 games 41%. So I'm not sure what you guys are looking at. It is better than he's doing early in the season, but this is not most improved player type numbers here. This is not even worthy of, this is not, especially at the forward position, the position that he plays. He shouldn't be shooting freaking 41, 42% for the season. Are you serious? And even in the games that everyone is claiming he's been playing much better, you look at those stretch of games, you look at the 10 games, 20 games, he's still shooting 41, 42% in those last 10 to 30 games. So, look. The guy is not the kind of person you want on your team. It's a problem because it's really bad for the culture. What he did last year, he set a great example last year. He was hustling it more last year, and he played better defense last year, and he made some better decisions last year. He still had a lot of turnovers last year, but he came through a little more last year than he did this year. But because of the effort he's putting in this year, he's just not good for the young guys. This stuff matters, You look at RJ, since RJ, the last few games, RJ is now trying to be the man. I want to say, I guess, the last 10 games or so, last 10 games or so. Since RJ has started making the effort to be the man, he stopped committing to playing defense the way he was early in the season. I was talking about how RJ was doing a great job playing defense this year. All of a sudden now he wants to be the man. He's doing what Julius is doing. He's screw defense. He's not trying to play defense anymore, really. He's kind of letting it, taking breaks here and there. Look, I get it. You want to be the man. You want to take a lot of shots. You need to conserve energy, but that's where it becomes nonsense because then the coach needs to talk to them and be like, look, when you're out there, you need to be a two-way player. And then the coach needs to stop playing them 40 minutes a game. play them 30, 31 minutes a game, and you tell them, like, look, when you're out there on the court, you're going to give the team maximum effort. That's what he needs to say, tell this team. But that's the issue with Tom Thibodeau right there, right? And so that's the issue we run into. But, with these guys, it's just, you can't tell me this guy's having a great season or like he's having all the vintage or last year's Julius Randle's back. He's not back. He's nowhere near having the same numbers that he had last year, And so all these people that are out there arguing about, where are the Julius haters and all this other stuff. Julius, maybe they're not talking as much, but they haven't gone anywhere. Julius Randle, you still got the same booty Julius Randle that you're getting this year. This is not the Julius Randle from last year. So I'm not sure what any of these guys are talking about. Julius Randle is not the kind of person you want on your team. This is not what you want on your team right here. A guy who basically, he shoots 42%. A power forward, 6'8", like 240, 250 power forward. He's shooting 42% from the field. Let me say that again. A 6'8", huge 6'8", like 240-pound power forward is shooting 42% from the field. The worst part, he's giving up about 46% from the field. That's not what you want on your team. You don't want to give up that. That's not what you want. You're starting in a hole. This is the guy who's leading your team. You want him to lead your team like this? He's a negative. He basically takes away from the team every time he's on the floor, right? And so that's not what you want. That's why they need to get rid of him, and they need to trade him as soon as they can. Obviously, I don't know what the team is going to do. I'm not a GM. I'm not sure what's possible with this guy in terms of trade. But honestly, he's a walking 2010, to tell you the truth. 1810. But he'll give that to a good team, that needs to fill that position. Especially if you don't have to use him as a primary scorer, right? You need to have other people kind of setting them up, right? So he's definitely got a lot of value in my opinion. Maybe not $33 million, but he definitely has a lot of value. And I think, I think they can, they could definitely, in my opinion, I think they can move him. And so that's what I have. You guys comment below. Let me know what you think. I'll be more than happy to respond. Also, please make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you so much.